Welcome to what they call the Steep, where we bring a Christian voice to the public square. I'm Jeffrey Mercer, pastor of Christ Fellowship Church here in Central Louisiana. It's July the 25th, 2019, and this is episode 1 of the Steep, where we discuss it, obviously, while my tea steeps. The first issue in episode 1 we want to cover is what might be the most pressing issue being discussed today, and that is the LGBT issue. And so what we want to do with this issue is, first of all, I would suggest the need to zoom out from the little wave that we're on, the little piece of wood in the ocean that we're being thrown on, and see the hurricane that has caused this, where we are, the larger storm that is tossing us on our little wave. So basically it begins in the early 19th century with a man named Hegel, who taught the idea that the whole cosmos is evolving, so cosmological evolution. And that obviously leads to cosmological expression. Well, then Karl Marx takes this idea, applies it to economics, and basically teaches economical evolution, which has economical expression to go with it. Then you have Charles Darwin come along, apply this to biology, and you have biological evolution, and you guessed it, it brings with it biological expression. Basically, given enough time, anything can become what it wants to, given enough time, space, matter, and chance and motion. So the same idea then gets applied during what's known as the sexual revolution. It's really a sexual evolution. And of course, the ethic that goes with it is sexual expression. So if you'll notice, the chief virtue of our day is ultimate self-expression, and you shall not infringe on anyone's right to express themselves. Well, here's what the problem is. There's a mathematical problem, and that is if you have more than one particular thing floating around, they might bump into each other, and the more things you add into the thing, into the system, they might bump into each other unless there's a principle of unity. Well, this that we're calling diversity and liberty is actually a movement of radical diversity, meaning there's no unity. Every sort of piece of confetti flying around shall be its own individual piece of confetti. Well, what happens when they start bumping into each other, like the feminism movement and the transgender movement is doing right now in women's sports? Well, you end up with something like kindergarten cop scene where everything is people's dumping flour on each other and painting, and everything's chaotic until someone is fed up with the chaos and they become really mean and angry and say, shut up, which is happening today. Now, I would suggest what's happening there is the failure of an idol. Your view of ultimate reality is what you'll become, as Darwin did and Marx did and the sexual revolution is doing. If you believe ultimate reality is this bound up tarp that's just unfolding, then you're going to become like that in your sexuality. Well, the problem is it's failing, and that's because it's an idol. It's creating actually not liberty, but not a freedom from division, but feminism and transgenderism are now divided. So it promised freedom from division, and this is the way to unity, and it led to division. So the biblical answer is to point that out, like Elijah did with the prophets of Baal. Once those gods are failing, to point out the true God, and it's actually a different doctrine, that the Bible teaches that the universe is about God expressing himself. So God has expressed himself in a unity and diversity within his own being for eternity, and he does that when he creates the world. Everything is expressing God, and the only way to get a balance of form and freedom is to worship the God who in himself is balanced in form and freedom. The only way to do that in this day in which we live is to come through Jesus Christ, because even though this thought is rational, that God is the source of all unity and diversity and balance and harmony, and these other worldviews are not, thus to chaos. Even though it's rational, it's an unbearable thought because of our conscience, and so the only way it's bearable is to come through Jesus Christ. And so I would encourage you not only to see the rationality, but to do that. So join us again next week, and we will cover another topic. There was something interesting in the Sin Law Focus I read this week, but we'll continue, Lord willing, bringing a Christian voice to the public square. Subscribe if you'd like, and thank you for listening.